What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan Knostman here, back with episode 2 of the Mom's Basement Regional Roundup, where we look at all of the fights that went down every week that you probably didn't watch. This week was a pretty quiet week in regional MMA. Last week we got a really big one, a lot of events going down, and next week is one of the biggest I've ever seen. So lots to look forward to. But this week there was obviously UFC 298, so that kind of always dampens the regional scene when there's a major card going on, because nobody really wants to try to compete with the largest MMA event or promotion, hosting an event on that day. So pretty quiet. We had KSW Epic over there in the Czech Republic, actually. KSW 91. These cards are tough oftentimes because, the Central European and Eastern European scene can be kind of hard to follow on times. And, obviously different languages is hard even through Tapology. But there's a couple notable fights in this card. Dominic Humberger, who is a big regional or big local fan favorite, he won by TKO in the second round. In the co-main event, really nice flurry of punches, finished his opponent off. And then in the main event, Valerio Mercier choked out Leo Brichta by submission, rear naked choke in the second round. And he moved to 30-14-1, I believe. Or 38-1, excuse me. He moved to 38-1. He's an interesting guy because he's on a 4-fight win streak. He's fought for Bellator before, 1-1 for them. He's only 30 years old and holds a massive record. And he won the middleweight championship with this fight. So really interesting guy to look for there. He's definitely talented, but KSW is doing a good job of keeping their own fighters around. So I'm sure he probably stays put. Outside of that, there was another event on Sunday post UFC 298. It was Levels Fight League over in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, actually. So this is a kind of newer promotion hosted by Stefan Struve. Hosted by Stefan Struve on commentary. He was joined by Robin Black, who's always a blast to listen to if you know his commentary at all, and Andy Shepard, who's a pretty notable English play-by-play commentator and host. So, well covered on the commentary front. They seem to be the only high-functioning promotion in the Netherlands at the moment, meaning they have a pretty good grasp on the scene, and they have a lot of good up-and-coming fighters. And this seemed like one of their more talent-filled cards. I tuned in about 3 fights into the card. There was 9 fights total, and as I started watching, I saw, the next fight up was Shah Kamil, who is a English fighter. He's now 2-0 as a professional. He's Bangladeshi English, which is interesting. And in his pre-fight, he talked about his last fight got like 2 million views over in India and Bangladesh. So he's kind of turned into a regional star over there. And he came out, he had a late notice opponent. He was supposed to fight Thomas Narmo, who is a heavyweight who looked pretty good in his first 4 fights and has gone on a 5-fight skid since, but he got hurt and had to pull out. And he had this Brazilian fighter as a replacement. And Shah Kamil is just a unit of a man. You can tell, there's big guys and then there's built guys. He's got that Hamdi Abdul Wahab build, like just a tank, big barrel chest. And he came out swinging. I mean, this first part of the first round was just heavyweight brawl. I mean, there was no technique, no game planning, just wide hooks and guys trying to knock each other out. And then he actually level changed after the brawl began, took the guy down, his opponent, put him in a crucifix immediately, and then proceeded. Oh, hey, James, there's my dog back there. Wants to tune in. Put him in a crucifix immediately and proceeded to land about 60 unanswered punches and elbows before the stoppage. But the most impressive part was his ability to maintain the crucifix. He, had the shin on one arm, wrapped around the arm with his hand on the other side, and his opponent was bucking. He was using the cage even to try to flip and reverse, but Shah Kamil did a really, really good job of maintaining top control and ended up finishing the fight. So, athletic heavyweight with good wrestling and decent enough striking at this level. I think he's definitely somebody to watch. Another guy who caught my attention was Clyde Brunswijk. Sorry, these Dutch names are a little hard sometimes. But he's a kickboxer and Muay Thai fighter. He's now 4-1 as a professional. He won. This fight was like if when you see those fights where you're like, oh, you watch the beginning of the first round, and you're like, there's no way this does not go past the first round. I mean, these guys are just landing shots. Yet somehow 10 minutes later, you're looking at a decision and you're like, how did these guys survive? So he fought, let me pull this up to get the name right. He fought Lucas Kulpa, who honestly looks pretty decent. His he kind of gassed out there at the end, but his wrestling stayed consistent. He was taking Brunswijk down, but Brunswijk just kept getting to his feet. He was, persistent, using good boxing, good kicks. You could tell he'd been in a lot of fights and kind of knew how to fight through that fatigue and the damage that Kulpa had put on him. But he ended up winning a decision. Again, he shared in the post-fight interview that he had 70 or 80 fights now in his career between Muay Thai, kickboxing, and MMA. So interesting guy to watch. He was definitely impressive. Alan Vandermecht, he was in the feature bout of the evening. German prospect, middleweight, just really athletic, tall, long. Didn't get a good look at him, to be honest, because he knocked his opponent out in 30 seconds. So, that's how it goes sometimes. These guys are good on the regional level, or good compared to their opponents, and it's a quick fight, but seems to be somebody else that Levels Fight League is looking to promote. In the co-main event, we had Yusri Belgawi fighting, what was his name? Ahmed Sami, who's an Iranian prospect. And for those of you who remember, Yusri Belgawi actually fought in the Contender Series earlier last year and lost to Marco Tullio. It was, he's a former Glory kickboxer, really tall, really long. I think he's 6'5" at light heavyweight, so, big for any division. And really diverse striking game. He'll kick, he'll knee, he'll throw punches, elbows. His range management could use some work because he sometimes walks himself against the cage and will get taken down. Although that is the, kind of normal transition from kickboxing in a ring to fighting mixed martial arts in a cage. So he's definitely interesting, but he just absolutely pulverized Sami for all 5 rounds. I mean, the toughness that Ahmed Sami displayed was otherworldly, like one of the more brutal performances I've seen. I mean, his eye was completely swollen shut. He was just beat up all over, legs, body, head, yet he continued to fight for takedowns. Belgawi did a very good job of standing up, dealing with the pressure, and getting back to range and fighting. But that's not too straight for him. He is the new light heavyweight champion. He took the vacant title in this fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets another UFC shot soon. He 2 fight win streak since the Contender Series loss that he had, and it was just a decision. So it's just shore up that wrestling a little bit, and I think he's definitely somebody to watch. And in the main event, somebody I have been really, really hyped on is Mario Pinto, a heavyweight out of Portugal. He was taping on Kasim Aras, who's a former Bellator fighter, heavyweight, kind of a standard Eastern European wrestler. Just cage pressure, overhands, looks to get on top. But Mario Pinto, typically a striker. He's very athletic, long for the division, and good kickboxer. But this fight was frankly just a grind. I mean, Kasim Aras just put him up against the fence, tried to take him down. Pinto did a good job countering, elbows, getting off the fence, striking when he could. It came down to damage at the end, and Kasim Aras did virtually none. So Mario Pinto did snatch the 5-round decision despite control time and other less significant statistics in the favor of Aras. But yeah, Mario Pinto, 8-0 heavyweight. He's their champion, defended his belt, and he's one of those guys you should definitely start looking for the next level, as there are not very many talented heavyweights out there. So yeah, he's definitely pretty talented. That was about it for regional MMA this past weekend. But this next weekend, we have an absolutely loaded schedule, like I've never seen before. On Friday, we have LFA 177 going down in Niagara Falls, New York. Devin Smith taking on Shami Khan Magomedov for the welterweight title. Devin Smith coming off the knockout of the year for LFA last year with his spinning wheel kick after a 3-year layoff. He's also the godson of Rashad Evans. We also have Shannon Clark, who we have discussed on this channel before on our LFA preview back for the Denver, Colorado card. She's fighting for the flyweight title, 125 pounds. She's 4-0. Good fighter to look for. A lot of good stuff on this card, but can't focus too much on this because we got more events to get to. We got Cage Warriors 166 going down in San Diego, California on Friday, February 23rd. 2 Mom's Basement MMA interviewees, Bobby Winther, check out that interview, dropped today, and Anthony Orozco are both fighting on this card, as well as Wilson Haish versus Toby Misek in the main event. So that's pretty good card down in San Diego. Love those California Cage Warriors cards. Got Ryzen Landmark 8 going down in Japan. This is good because Ryzen actually just introduced a new subscription package to their events. So previously they would charge $20 for a pay-per-view through DAZN or Triller, so Fight TV. But now through their website, they are actually doing their own package where you pay $20 a month and you have access to all of their events and pay-per-views, all the backlog of events plus other content. So it's definitely something that I wish more MMA promotions would do, is more of a monthly subscription type thing where you kind of get all of it at the flat rate. And looks like they're moving in that direction, which is cool. We have A1 Combat on Friday in Sacramento, California, Uriah Faber's promotion. Devin Jackson on that card, really fun guy to watch. Good event to keep an eye out for. CES 76 over in the Northeast United States. Budo Cento Championship down in Mexico, really big. They're doing their largest event yet. Alexa Grasso is going to be there. Apparently, Kelvin Gastelum is going to make an appearance, which is interesting. Heading down to Mexico for some celebrity stuff. And then on Saturday, we have Lux 40 down in Mexico as well. We have Niza 57, which is over in Kazakhstan. Former UFC fighter Zhalgas Zhumagulov is going to be on that card, I believe, main event or co-main event. We have, and then we also have perhaps one of the biggest events of the weekend is KSW Epic. So back-to-back weeks for KSW, but this next one is a truly special event. It's going to be almost a Fight Circus-esque card. They have a variety of different events, similar to Dogfight Wild Tournament, which I talked about last week, which was one of my favorite events of all time. So I can't wait for this KSW card. But they have a variety of events, such as 4-ounce Muay Thai in a cage. The main event is Kabilov, their biggest star. He's going to be boxing Adamek, who's one of the big boxers from Poland. They have MMA in a gi with MMA gloves. Therefore, it's a judo black belt versus a jiu-jitsu black belt, but there's full MMA rules. They have a pride rules match, so kicks, stomps, knees, no elbows. They have a no holds barred match, which I believe is no time limit and everything goes. They have a 4-man light heavyweight one-night tournament. I mean, it's going to be one of the more insane nights of fights I've ever seen. So KSW.com or KSW.tv, $10, buy the event, 100% worth it. Can guarantee it. And then on Sunday, we have even more stuff. We have, Saturday. We also have Combat Zone 83, which is Calvin Cater's promotion going on in New Hampshire. They're getting the University of New Hampshire Arena, holds about 10,000 people. They've been advertising this event for a while. Really, really good card. Keep an eye out for that. I'm not sure where they're streaming it, but I would check out Kaposa at Grabaka Hitman on Twitter or his website. Always a good place to look for regional events and their streams. But Sunday, we have Fight Club Rush going down in Sweden. Regional Swedish promotion, nothing too special there. And then we also have UWC 51 going down in Mexico. So just an absolute plethora of events going down next weekend. And it's interesting, Mexico's doing a bunch of big cards in the same weekend as UFC Mexico City. So we're going to see how the attendance goes for all those different events. But now we got the regional stuff out of the way. I was going to answer a few questions this week that we got from our Instagram story. Go follow at Mom's Basement MMA on Instagram. We're going to post a weekly thing for your questions about regional MMA, about prospects, events, what my thoughts are, that kind of stuff. So let's take a look here. Let me pull these up. First question from my boy, the 3Ls on Instagram. Who is an under the radar prospect that should be signed by a big promotion but isn't yet? That is a good question. Let's see. Honestly, to give a feature for next week, I'm going to go with Devin Smith in the main event of LFA 177. Took a few years off, but came back in his last fight and looked great. He's 10-3, 28 years old. He's got the pedigree. He's got the name. Rashad Evans being his godfather. And I think, without a doubt, if he wins this next fight, he will be he'll be in the UFC. I think he can skip the Contender Series, frankly. This next question is from Joe Reynolds, MMA. Where's the regional scene going wrong direction-wise and vice versa? It's a good question. I think the regional scene is doing a lot of good stuff right now. I think there's a lot of, we don't have many competitors to the UFC, but I think there's a really nice wide base of promotions around the world that are starting to establish themselves. You look over in Europe with Octagon, KSW, Levels Fight League, Cage Warriors. Look over in Asia with Ryzen, Niza FC, the Russian promotions, ACA, all these. There's just a really wide variety of good events right now going around the country or around the world. Even in South Africa, you have EFC, so scene's starting to grow there. It's really exciting to see. But I think the limitations to the regional scene are because of the UFC, frankly. I think if the UFC had their way, they want the UFC to be synonymous with MMA. They don't want you to know the difference. I'm sure people know who train MMA and otherwise somebody's like, oh, you train UFC. It's like, no, I train the sport. UFC is the equivalent, like the top league. So when people think that, they don't really think about all the other fight promotions that exist. So I think when the UFC chooses to begin to recognize more regional promotions or the top level organizations kind of start to build up, like something the PFL is doing is they already partnered with some European small promotions, and they're going to be a direct talent line from those promotions. They're going to promote. They're going to help build those promotions with money and resources and getting fighters to their league, and in turn, those smaller leagues give their best prospects to the promotion. So kind of like what LFA has with the UFC right now. So it's hard to make a statement on the regional scene as a whole because it's so diverse and literally worldwide, but I think there's a lot of good and a lot of not so good happening. And at the end of the day, it's a fight sport, and you got a lot of greedy promoters out there, making it hard for fighters to make their way. So there's always going to be the good and the bad, but I think the regional scene is definitely on the way up. And the last question I'll be answering is from Pat Dana MMA, my boy. Talk about Loner Kavanaugh versus Sean Marcos da Silva. And also, who do you think Paul Hughes fights? Those are great questions. Loner Kavanaugh versus Da Silva is going to be just a absolute barn burner. I said this to him in the DMs, but this is going to be like Alexander Luke versus Luke Riley, the sequel. These are two undefeated prospects who just are lightning fast, love to stand and bang, and frankly are just all action fighters. So I believe, let me double check the date on this fight. I think it goes down in March, if I'm not mistaken, but it's going to be, again, they're two flyweights. They're so fast, so talented. March 30th. Yep. Cage Warriors 169. So yeah, I don't know if I can make a pick right now. It's just one of those fights. I just can't wait to sit in front of my TV and just take the action in, because it's going to be one of those ones you have to watch a few times to really grasp just how good it is. And who is Paul Hughes going to fight? That is a good question. I feel like the Cage Warriors, they've been sending some guys to the UFC, but they have a few prospects right now. Paul Hughes, Jordan Vucenic, guys like that who seem to, be right on the brink of going pro, being, good UFC fighters, yet they just aren't seeming to get signed. And I think it's a good question. Could be looking at a rematch with James Hendon. He just beat Tobias Harilla, and that was a really good performance from him. Obviously, they fought once before, but yeah, I mean, I think frankly, the UFC is next for Paul Hughes, and he should settle for nothing less. But yeah, that about wraps it up for this week's regional roundup. Like I said, tune in to as many events as you can this next week. It's going to be glorious. And yeah, check out our Instagram. Check my Instagram out at DSK Combat Sports. Check me out on Twitter at DSK MMA. Check out Mom's Basement MMA on Instagram. Drop any questions you have for me next week. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time. Peace.